Okay, well, welcome to our September call. Thank you guys for pivoting. We typically have our team calls the first Monday of the month, but with yesterday being Labor Day, we wanted to just make sure that we, acknowledge everybody having the holiday and having that time with your family. So thank you for making tonight a priority. Let's start with some fun, would you call it accolades? There's I know recognition and accolades. Okay, he's the writer, so he's telling me I can say that. So we're going to start with some accolades and recognition from August. First and foremost, let's celebrate that freaking Lauren Farmer signed 8 new customers. 8 new customers, you guys. That is huge. That's amazing. So she signed 8 customers in the month of August, and then she brought on a new business builder who is going to be here shortly. And he actually signed somebody yesterday. He also is a physical therapist, so he is in good company. Very, very excited about that. Want to also celebrate that Carly J, who's not able to be on the call tonight, that she added 3 new customers, and she also had a face-to-face meet up with some of her business builders, and she's getting them excited about moving and running. And so that's been really fun to watch. Third, want to celebrate our newest Fast Start Silver, Marta. She's on the call right now. She's local here in Boise. We got to connect. I guess that was this last week at Hannah's house. So Hannah is her sponsor. And so that she also came to our house, right, for the local event that we had a couple weeks ago. So she's just diving right in. She's been a customer of Hannah's for a little while. She's already read a network marketing book, the How to Rock Your Network Marketing, and she went Fast Start Silver in a matter of like 2 days. Incredible. So, so proud of you. Kim Million, she also has a new runner who started her business in August. If Bonnie is on, hello, Bonnie. We got to have a face-to-face meeting and conversation, and she also came to our local event in Boise a couple of weeks ago. And Bonnie is excited to hit the ground running. So congratulations to Kim on that. We had 4 ambassador conversions in August, which is awesome. So that means that 4 new people are starting to make a paycheck with Plexus, which is awesome. We saw team-wide growth and team-wide growth with our customer enrollment as well in the month of August, which is so exciting. When we're moving forward, it's always exciting. Lauren Farmer and Carly J are both on the Cancun leaderboard, which is amazing. If you guys are unaware, our Rising Leaders Retreat contest just started on September 1st, and we have 4 months to earn this retreat. You earn 2 tickets to Moon's Palace in Cancun, Mexico. It's an all-inclusive. All you have to do is get yourself there, and then your trip with your guest is covered with Plexus, and you can earn that for free over these next 4 months. And real quickly, you earn it by enrolling VIPs, enrolling customers, retaining those customers, and growing in rank. And that goes down to your levels 1s and 2s. You get credits on those. So it's super simple. You're just being rewarded for your work that you are doing already. And so super excited about Lauren and Carly already being on the company-wide leaderboard for that. Any other wins for the month that we can celebrate from August that I missed? I know we had some really great things. Anything else? Okay. If so, if you think about it, throw it in the chat. I think that we should always be celebrating and recognizing any little bit of a win. So as a thank you for taking time out of your night to come and hang out with us, to come and learn and to train, I'm going to just do a fun little giveaway at the end of the call tonight. I'm going to just draw from one of you guys, and I'm going to send one of you guys a gift card to a place of your choice, just as a thank you for being here, celebrating our team and growth in the new season. So I was mentioning that a couple of weeks ago, we hosted a local event in Boise with my handsome husband, Christopher Burgess, and I'll introduce him a little bit in detail more later on. But we had this event, and Chris was walking us through this exercise on how to tell our story with Plexus. And he used Hannah. I don't know if she's on here right now, but he used Hannah kind of as I don't want to say a guinea pig, but kind of a guinea pig, where she kind of was able to like talk through her story with Plexus. And she's been with us for over 8 years, and I've been with her every step of her story. So one would think, oh, I'm not moved by this, or I know all the details. I've heard all of this, but that was so not the case. Having Hannah tell her story again, it like did something inside of my soul, and I think in hers as well, where it just kind of reminded us of, oh my goodness, like this business, this opportunity, these products, all of this is such a gift, and it's been huge for her and her family and for so many people in her life. So that's one story section right there. Then in the month of August, many of you guys got in touch with me after we did 2 nights, 2 Monday nights, we did training and inspiration, where it was really based on story. And so many of you guys got in touch with me and just said, I needed to hear those. I needed to hear those stories again. I needed to be reminded of those stories again. And then last week, I was asked to train, to host a training for a Ruby team that's outside of our Plexus team here, but on a different Plexus team. And they asked me to come and share a little bit of my story. And after I walked away from that call, I kind of got embarrassed because as I ended off the training call, I was like, that was really encouraging, guys. Thanks. And then I was like, wait, I was the one that was talking. I shouldn't have said that. That's kind of embarrassing. But I walked away feeling really encouraged because I hadn't really revisited my story in a while. And again, I walked away just feeling like, wow, there's so much to be grateful for and so much to be proud of, to go and share and to help other people. And Kim Million sent me a text this afternoon, and I was helping her with a message that she was sending to somebody, and she said something along the lines of like, I almost didn't send the message, I was kind of scared to send it, but I thought, why not? Like, this could be a huge blessing for them. And so I hope that tonight, and along with, the past couple of weeks that we've had the training and inspiration, and after we have Chris's exercise that he walks us through, I hope that you will have something stirring up in your soul where you will be reminded of how impactful these stories are. So stories are what I think for the majority of us brought us here with Plexus. Raise your hand. Let me see. Raise your hand if there was a story that you heard about somebody's health that made you interested in trying the Plexus products. So raise your hand. I want to see if there was a story that you heard about someone's health that made you interested in trying the products. Okay. That's like the majority of you. I think almost every single one of you raised your hand with that. So somebody's story then created you to take a step. It gave you some bit of hope. It kind of churned something in your mind, hearing their story, seeing their before and after. What about, did you see or hear someone's story about the business, about the opportunity, and that kind of got your wheels to turning? Raise your hand if you saw or heard a story about the business that made you think, maybe I could do this too. Maybe this is something that could change things for our family. So beautiful. So you guys maybe have heard this story 1,000 times. Maybe you're brand new and you've never heard this story, but I want to give you a very, very quick overview of what my story is, because I hadn't shared it in a long time. And like I said, sharing it again last week really did something to my soul. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. Chris and I, we got married, and we're happy in love, lucky in love, but we were very tight financially. He is an incredible writer, very gifted. He has a heart for telling stories about Jesus. He had been a missionary overseas. I also was doing ministry when we got married. We got pregnant very quickly after we got married. And so I stopped working, and we were totally reliant upon his income, and we were really tight. He was paying off his seminary student loans, and I desperately wanted to stay home with our daughters. At the time, it was just one, but I really wanted to stay home with our daughters. I remember by way of Colorado and Arkansas, we made our way up to Idaho. We moved to Idaho. But in that time, like during that time, we got really sick with my pregnancy. We were paying bukus of money for my medication. I think we had to borrow $500 a month from my parents so we could just make ends meet. It was super, super tight. We got to Idaho. He got a great job working at a ministry. What'd you call it, ministry? A ministry organization. And then I started working part-time for Young Life, which is another ministry organization. So I was doing that part-time. I was making $500 a month because I wanted to contribute financially. Um, but I also really, really wanted to stay home. Well, in this time, my friend Tamra sent me some messages asking me if I wanted to do Plexus. I said no. She sent me some samples of Slim. I did not ask her to send me samples of Slim, but she sent me samples of Slim. I threw them in the trash, but she sent me a note, and she told me in this note how much she believed in me and how she thought and she like listed out different qualities about me that she thought would help me to be successful in this business. Well, like I said, I threw the samples in the trash. I threw the letter in the trash. I wanted nothing to do with Plexus. I wanted nothing to do with network marketing. I cared way too much about people. I cared way too much about relationships. And I was honestly one, turned off by how I'd seen it done by other people. And two, I think I was really afraid. I was really afraid of what other people would think. And so over years and years of me saying no to that friend Tamra, I was seeing these stories come through on social media. I was seeing stories of before and after. I was seeing stories of my friends who had lost a little bit of that baby weight. And that was the season I was in. I had that baby weight I could not lose. But then I also saw stories of people that I loved and trusted, like they were changing things for their families financially. Tamara had been a Papa Murphy's mystery shopper and an Arby's mystery shopper, making like $25 to $40 each time she would go and, chomp a pizza. That was how she was providing for her family. And then I saw that they were able to move to Northwest Arkansas, and they built their dream home and their dream neighborhood, and they were changing things for their family. I also saw that they paid off over $100,000 of student loans because her husband went to PA school. They paid off over $100,000 in student loans in a matter of 6 months. So that got the wheels to turning. I was seeing the before and afters, the health changes in those stories. And then I was also seeing these stories of people that I knew, that I loved, that I trusted, changing things for their families. Long story short, I decided to try the products again. She sent them to me for free. Many of you guys know that story. She sent me the triplex for 2 months. And I really hoped that I would lose 40 pounds in those 2 months and then never have to say anything about Plexus because I was like a hot looking mom now without the 40 extra pounds. Well, that didn't happen. I did start to feel a lot better. So much so that at the end of those 2 months of the products coming to an end, I sat down with Chris. It was in December of 2016, and we sat down in our living room and we physically wrote a list of pros and cons of what Plexus could look like for our family because I knew that Tamara would not continue to pay for my products for free. But there was a stirring in my heart where I knew that this could be the way that could change things for our family. So many of you know the story. We hit the ground running in January of 2017. I was scared to death. In the middle of the summer, we had gone gold. So that means we were making about $1,000 a month with my Plexus income. So we were doubling what I had been making with my Young Life job. And I had such joy doing this Plexus business. I was getting all these stories back from people telling me, hey, like my watch usually tells me that I don't sleep at night, but now my watch is telling me that I'm getting really, really great quality sleep every single night. And the only thing I changed was Plexus. Or getting stories about their husband, saying that their wife was back again, or they finally lost weight. They'd never been able to lose weight, and they're finally starting to see that scale move. I'm getting these stories back, and it's really, really fueling me. And then Chris and we went on a date one night, and he just told me, he looked me in the eyes and he said, Em, you seem really fulfilled. And at that point, there was something there of my husband sees this is not just me out trying to make a dollar. I'm not just trying to sell something. He sees that this is changing me, that this is bringing fulfillment. This is bringing joy because I'm seeing this help so many people while I'm also being able to contribute financially to our family. So we just continued to storm on. And there were so many hard times, you guys. There were so many moments that I would just look at Chris and just say, like, this is really hard. Or I would just be crying and just thinking, is it worth it? Is it worth it? But I knew in my heart that it was. And so we just kept going. And so within a year and a half, we got to one of the top positions in the company called Emerald. And so we were making six figures there. That was probably seven to $10,000 a month is what we were bringing in, which is a pretty nice difference from making $500 a month. And that also allowed us to for me to be home fully with our girls. Then about a year and a half later, we hit the very top of the company, which was on average like $20,000 a month, plus all these amazing other perks. But for me, the biggest perk outside of just having that financial freedom, that time freedom, this community has been for my husband. One of my biggest goals when Chris and I, or when I started my Plexus business, was for him to be able to leave his job. Though he loved it, it was a great job. It was good to us. It brought us to Idaho. It was so good to us. I knew that from the time I met him, he wanted to write. He wanted to go and tell stories, and I knew he was really good at it. But what he was doing with his job, he didn't have time to go and do this. And so in 2021, he stepped away from that job and he started to pursue his own endeavors. And since then, he has had multiple documentaries that have come out onto the big screen. And we are hearing from people all over the world how these stories that he's telling are changing lives, that are changing hearts. And so I wanted to pass the mic off to him, and I want him to help us to kind of discover our story. Because what I hope comes from this call tonight is I hope that there's this renewal of your energy. If you've been here for a while, there's a renewal of your energy, a renewal of your excitement and your belief and in yourself and in Plexus as a business, in Plexus with the products. I hope that you walk away feeling like this is the right place to be. And I want to, not to be cheesy with the convention, but like I want to get loud about Plexus. I want to go into this and be confident to tell my story because my story is impactful. My being y'all's. Your story is impactful. And I want you guys to feel empowered and confident telling your story. So I'm going to pass it off to my husband, Christopher Burgess, the best man you'll ever know.
Well, hey everybody. I'm less good on Zoom than Em is, so just bear with me. So we're talking about stories. And what I want to talk tonight about is I want to help you see your story and be able to tell it in a way that impacts other people. So what I want to do quickly is talk about what a story does, what a story is, and then how you can tell your story. And so we're going to go through those three areas. So first off, what a story does is pretty incredible. So probably you have all had this experience. I mean, maybe you just had it just now when Em is telling her story of getting kind of caught up into this story. The first time that I really remember noticing this, Emily came and visited me in Wales when I was living in the UK, and we went over to Wales and we went to a little movie theater, and we watched this movie with Denzel Washington and a train, and the train is like running off the tracks. The whole movie is just a really super intense movie, and I am looking over at Em, and I don't know her, as well as I do now, but we're still dating, and I look over at her, and she is just like curled up in her seat, just like sweaty and nervous, just watching, all this crazy stuff happen in this action movie. Now, if we were to like step outside of that scene for a second, one of the things that I could have thought was, this woman is insane. Like, she doesn't know the difference between a movie and real life. Like, she doesn't know that this is just an actor and none of this is real and none of this is actually happening. And she's over here just an emotional mess. But I didn't do that, one, because I loved her, but two, also because like that we understand that's how movies work. That's how stories work. What was happening to Em was she was suspending her disbelief and entering into the story. So she was feeling the things that she felt like Denzel Washington would have been feeling as that train is running off course. And that's what stories do, is stories are a way for us to enter into the experience of another person. So as Emily's telling her story to you guys, or as you're listening to somebody tell a story, what you're doing is you're imagining yourself in that position. What would that be like for me? What would I be feeling in this situation? What would that be doing to me? The crazy thing is it actually does it, like it unlocks part of your brain when that happens. When you're listening to a story, when you're engaged with a story, your brain is actually releasing a hormone called oxytocin, which is also called the love hormone. So it's the same hormone that gets released when a mother breastfeeds her child, or when you're hugging, or when you have this moment of connection. Stories can do that. So stories unlock this feeling in our brains of allowing us to empathize with another person. It actually allows us to enter into the story that person is telling. Okay, so that is great. And everybody loves talking about stories. You guys know how impactful stories are. You all know about times that you've got sucked up in a novel or a movie or whatever it is. Like that, I mean, Netflix has built an empire over telling stories. Like we all know the power of stories. The thing that often gets missed is what actually is a story. So that's one of the things that I just feel like we can say, like, we can talk about stories all day long, but if we miss this point, what is a story, then we miss the whole thing. So what a story is, all a story is just one moment of transformation. And that's it. It's just a 5-second moment of transformation where the beginning of the story is opposite from the ending of the story. And the rest of the story, the rest of the time you're talking or the book you're reading or whatever, is only there to give you context of that one point of transformation. So to use an example, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Okay, what is the story about? The story is about just that one moment on Mount Crumpet where the Grinch is holding, he's hanging off the cliff, holding all the presents for the Who's that he's stolen. And in that moment, the Grinch's heart grows 3 sizes. And that's what the story is about, is just how this curmudgeonly loner became the kind of guy who's going to be at this big Christmas dinner with the Who's. But the rest of the book is just there to give context and meaning to that one moment. So this is important, and we're going to see in a minute why this is important. So a story is not just you telling what happened last weekend. A story isn't just you talking about a camping trip. A story has to have that moment of transformation, or it's not actually a story. The transformation has to be there. That's what it's all about. So a story is a moment of transformation. So to get there, we're going to talk about how to tell your story. So here's 3 things that I think I want you to keep in mind as you're telling the story. So I'm going to give you some homework and assignment at the end of this. But so we've got the moment of transformation. We know what a story can do. 3 things to keep in mind as you're telling your story. So the first one is a story has to have a character. It has to have somebody in it who is relatable. So in M's story, she's telling you the story about, how Plexus has changed our family, but she's also telling you the story about what it was like before Plexus, what it was like when I was working at a nonprofit and we were struggling to make ends meet. She's telling you that, one, because that's actually part of the story, but two, because it allows you to empathize with the challenges that character has faced. If she just walked in and said, "Hey, I'm a diamond in Plexus and I make X amount of money and I've gotten to do all these trips and stuff," you kind of immediately check out. You need to hear the challenges of the person that has been on this journey in order to be able to empathize with this person. In a movie, what they call that is saving the cat. So you know that the hero early in the story is the hero because they'll do something nice, like save a cat out of a tree or something. But you'll see these relatable moments where you can find that you can put yourself in the position of the character. I tell this story. I teach this class with missionaries, and I tell this story about when I lived in Istanbul. I was a missionary, and I shared. I basically gave a Bible to one of my Turkish friends there, and he ended up years later becoming a pastor and is now living in Turkey as a pastor. Um, when I tell that story, though, I could tell it 2 ways. I could tell it one way of like, I went overseas as this heroic missionary to this foreign country, and I helped convert a person to Christianity, and I was able to do this like very bold, dangerous thing. I could tell it that way. One, that's not true. That didn't actually happen that way. And two, if you're a Christian, it probably makes you feel like, well, I could never do that. Like I couldn't do that. In reality, though, the way I actually tell the story is I basically like kept messing up and bumbled through every step of the way, and then as just an afterthought, gave him this Bible, and that was it. And then I got on a plane and left. And the real story is one, is actually what happened, but two, it also allows me to be a relatable character to you, the listener. So, your takeaway from this is as you're thinking about your story and how you're going to tell your story, don't be afraid to be honest. Don't be afraid to show the times that you've made mistakes. Don't be afraid to show the challenges. Don't be afraid to make yourself look bad, because that's going to be the very thing that's going to connect the listener with you and what you're saying. Okay, so stories need a relatable character. Stories also need a sense of place or setting. So, and once again, I'm going to back up real quick. When I'm talking about stories, what I don't expect is for everybody on this call to go start making documentaries or become the next great novelist. If you do, that's great. But when I'm thinking about stories, primarily what I'm thinking about is something that you might share over a cup of coffee, or something that you might even like write out on social media, or something that like you might be able to take and package in different ways. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm like sharing your story. And we'll get into more details on that here in a little bit. But um,
And we're talking like for this particular thing, specifically be thinking about your plexus story. I think that that obviously is like why we're here, but I just want to make sure everybody's like thinking through that of like that point of transformation in your plexus story so you can be then confident to go and share your story in an impactful way.
So stories need a sense of place. And what I mean by that is that what a story does when you start telling a story. So like if you have a good storyteller or a good author or something, often the response from the listener or the reader is, man, that was magic. Like I don't know how you did that, but it felt like I was there. Like I felt like I was like you created this world that I stepped into when I started reading the story or listening to you tell this story. The secret is that the author or the storyteller didn't actually do that. You, the audience, did. You created that place. So an example is um, when I was a kid, I read the Chronicles of Narnia, and I have these vivid memories of just like wandering around like the forest of Narnia and seeing, Aslan the lion and seeing the castles and all the forests and everything. And I just like it was a world that like as a kid, I just remember like entering into fully. As an adult, I went back and reread those books with my girls. And I was surprised because C.S. Lewis, the author, doesn't actually describe Narnia that much. Like he just says a little bit, he has a few breadcrumb trails in there. But what I had done as a kid was I had like filled it all in with my imagination. And that's what you're wanting to do as you tell your stories. You want to have a sense of the whole time, where am I at in the story? So when I'm listening to it, instead of just giving information, what I'm doing is like I'm sitting at my kitchen table and I'm looking at my budget and I'm thinking, how are we going to make ends meet this week? That's more powerful than just saying money was tight. So because what I've done is I've allowed you to imagine yourself in that scenario of sitting at a budget or like having a budget meeting with your spouse at a kitchen table. I don't need you to know what my kitchen table looks like. I don't need to give you all the details of what my kitchen looks like. I just need to say a couple things that put you in a place throughout. So if you can keep that sense of place as you're telling your story, that will make it much more powerful, because what will happen is automatically the listener will start playing a movie in their head, imagining where they're at as you go on this journey. So stories need a relatable character. They need a sense of place. And the last thing that they need is suspense. And what I mean by suspense is I don't mean it needs to be like a horror film or something like that where you're constantly afraid that like you're going to get, murdered or whatever. You need to just have a sense of like, okay, so what happens next? So what happens next? How do like I want to know what happens next. And that's going to be the key of knowing whether your story works or not. Is the test is if you can tell your story over a dinner, like a crowded dinner, and everybody leans in. And if you were to stop talking, they would say, no, go on. Well, what happened next? That's how you know you have a good story. because people's attention, like it's not just something they can be polite for a little bit, but eventually they will zone out. To earn their attention, you have to use suspense to get them continuing to know, like, well, what happened next? The trick is that's easier the shorter the story you tell. Like, so, I mean, if you're only telling a 3 minute story, it's not real hard to keep somebody's attention that long. The longer you go, the more likely it is that you're going to lose somebody's attention, even if you're an incredible storyteller. So my challenge for you is to keep it short. How do we use suspense? What does it look like in practice to use suspense in your story? Well, a simple way of doing that is even with like a question. Like you just say, like, you'll never believe what happened to me, after I said yes to this. And then that immediately makes you kind of start wondering, like, well, what happened? Like, I want to know. You just want to introduce some unknown where if they stick with you, they're going to have those questions resolved. But another good way of doing this is just how you're actually structuring your story. So stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, like we all know this, it makes sense, but it's important to know what those three things actually do in the story to help us with the suspense of moving through the story. So stories have a beginning. What your beginning needs to do is it needs to introduce that relatable character, and it needs to introduce a sense of place where that character is at. So you could say, I'm sitting at my kitchen table with my husband, and we are stressed out over bills. Or I am standing looking at myself in the mirror, and I can't believe what has come to you, or whatever like that. You want to just introduce your relatable character, your sense of place, and the problem. Okay, so that's what you need in the beginning. What is the problem? The problem might be that you're having health issues. The problem might be that your budget's really tight. The problem might be that you feel like you're working a job where you're not able to be involved with your kid's life. Whatever the problem is, it needs to be introduced very early on, because that problem is going to be the thing that is going to get you through the rest of the story. And one of the rules in storytelling is that the bigger the problem, the better the story. The bigger the challenges, the better the story. So the beginning does those three things: introduces the character, introduces the place, and introduces the problem. The middle of the story is where you come up with the plan. So you come up with a plan of how you're going to get out of that problem. So maybe that plan in your story is, I just started taking Plexus and it was great. Maybe the plan is, okay, I started becoming like Tamara, like a pizza, like a secret pizza shopper or something like that. You come up with a plan, and then in the middle, the plan runs into challenges. So things are going to go wrong as you start the plan. So for M, she said yes to Plexus. Part of what's happening, part of the challenges is she's going to decide, am I all in? And then as she goes on the journey, it's not always easy. It's not just a steady upward climb. She has, people in our church were mean to her. She had like different setbacks, different things that happened, but you want to include those challenges in that middle part. It wasn't all easy. It was like there were hard things that kept happening. So that's the middle, is the plan and the challenges. So the end is going to be the shortest part of your story, but the end is that moment of transformation. So the end is where it finally works. The plan, the thing that you put together finally works, it finally clicks, and you see everything change. So that's where the end comes in. And then as you're ending your story, a nice thing to do is just mirror that ending to the beginning. So if your story starts out at a kitchen table where you were stressed because of a tight budget, the story could end at that same kitchen table, except now you're able to sit with a meal with friends or your kids and not worry about how much groceries cost or something like that. You're able to mirror those things together. So stories need a relatable character. They need a sense of place. They need suspense to take you through the story. And suspense means just knowing what happened next. And within that suspense of getting through the story, you need to keep in mind a beginning, a middle, and an end to your story. And so as you're thinking about your story, remember what a story is. It's just a moment of transformation. What I want you to think about in your life, in your own journey, is where have I seen that transformation? What has changed for me? And specifically here, what has changed through Plexus? So your story may look different than M's story or Hannah's story or somebody else's story, but there is a moment where something changed for you. What did that change? And so what that does is that allows, as you're talking to a person, if you use this like framework for telling your story, what that person is going to do is they're going to not just hear your story and want to know what happened. They're going to imagine themselves in that story that you're telling. And they're going to see themselves feeling the feelings that you felt as you went on this journey of transformation. And then they're going to be invited into that process as well. Um, Lastly, and this is where the homework comes in, is what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to think about what is that moment of transformation for you. And then I would like you to maybe find a friend who you can practice maybe just a 3-minute story. Practice what that looks like and try and include all those moments. And just keep keep in mind, like if there's a moment in your story that feels like it's dragging a little bit or slow, maybe your friend will let you know, like, hey, maybe we actually don't need that. Oh, here's another thing, real quick. Sorry, another reason that like understanding what a story is because one of the things as you're starting writing a story, the hard thing to know, and this is the hardest thing with your story, is to know what to take in and what to leave out, like what to keep in the story and what to take out of the story. That like so one of the documentaries, well, any documentary that I work on, the documentary is 90 minutes long. Often I have like 15 hours of footage that I'm editing down to. So I want to know, and that's the same thing for your life. If you're telling a 3-minute story, you cannot possibly include every single thing that has happened in your life. So that transformation moment becomes the filter to know, like, does this matter for that moment of transformation? And if it doesn't, that's how you know to take it out. So that's how you kind of streamline your story down. So what I want you to do is find a moment of transformation, find a friend to partner with, and then practice telling your story. Keep it moving and have your friend give you feedback. I'm like, yeah, that actually was really engaging, or really it drug through this part. Maybe you could take that part out. Or where were you at during this part of the story? Were you sitting in a car? Were you in your kitchen? Like keep that sense of place going. And then lastly, when you have that 3-minute story ready, what you should be able to do is take that story with its nugget of transformation in it and then translate that to many different things. So maybe you're telling that same story to somebody over coffee, or maybe you're using that story online on social media, on Instagram or something like that. And you should be able to like expand or shorten that story as needed depending on the context. And that's where you might need to get a little bit creative as you're thinking about how and when you're telling that story. But one of my writing coaches used to say, if you can tell a story in 5 pages, then tell it to me in 5 paragraphs. And if you can tell it to me in 5 paragraphs, tell it to me in 5 sentences. And if you can tell in 5 sentences, tell me in 5 words. And so that's how you kind of hone in on, the heart of your story, the heart of transformation. So that's how to tell a story. I will let Em talk about how you guys can maybe put that into practice. But thank you guys.
Thank you for sharing this. So, okay, question for you, and this might be beneficial for you guys too. Like when I hear you say a moment of transformation, and we talked about this at our business event that we did a few weeks ago with Marta and Bonnie and Hannah and Kim. Moment of transformation, to me, I think like when we're making a post, because that's where the majority of our marketing goes, right? So where the majority of our storytelling goes is on social media. To me, I feel like I could take this formula for really anything I'm wanting to share. And so for my moment of transformation, um, my moment of transformation, like in my entire story, isn't when I decided to do the business. My moment of transformation is when I went diamond, or what is that?
Yeah, and it could be, I mean, it depends on what story you're telling. Like if your
Yeah.
story is, and this could be where like your story, like things come in and out of focus in the story. So if the story is about your, health journey, then you might pull that into focus. If your story is about your, financial journey, that could be the thing that is maybe more in focus. For your story, what I would say is maybe the moment of transformation, like so saying yes to Tamara, so saying yes to Plexus, to me isn't the moment of transformation necessarily, but it's the beginning of the plan that we talked about at the beginning of the middle section. So it's the plan. So
Mm.
that's the thing that starts you out of the problem is the plan. Then the moment of transformation could be several things. And this is This is where again, telling a story is different than just like live streaming your entire life. You can contract and expand different moments.
Yeah.
And you can also like conflate moments together. So it might be that like, you're having all these feelings over the course of several months, but you could describe that as just like, that moment that you know, I remember, when I stepped away from my job and I was able to be
Hmm.
home, like
Yeah.
that, watching Chris get out of the car that morning and walk the girls to school, that moment, like,
Yeah.
and that moment captures all the feelings you've been feeling in this big thing. So just finding a moment that kind of can capture maybe some bigger feelings that you have is kind of how you can distill that into a moment of transformation. Because realistically, maybe the way that real life works is that often a moment of transformation isn't actually like something that happens in 5 minutes. It might be something that happens over the course of a week or a month or something like that. But if you can find a moment within that that kind of like is indicative of, all those big feelings that happen over that course of time, you can shrink that into that moment.
Well, and I feel like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when I look at our business, there were many moments of transformation. There wasn't just one moment of transformation, kind of like what Kanya said here. Like the moment I decided to try the product, the moment I felt like, okay, these products are helping me, so I'm going to start sharing. So it's like you can take little bits of your story and utilize this formula that he shared just with these little tips and tell little bits of your story, and those are your moments of transformation. Yeah, so I was very hopeful that everybody would like walk away just thinking through, just thinking more about their story with Plexus and then putting into play a little bit of what he recommended. So his homework to us is to craft your story. Now, for majority of us, we are sharing it on social media. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to craft my story in a social media form. Unless you tell me that that's wrong,
Yeah,
I'm not
no, that
doing the
works.
homework right. I'm going to share it with somebody here. I'm going to send it over to whomever, and I'm going to say, hey, can you look at this? I want to look at your story too. And then once we both get eyes on it, then I'm going to then go and share my story publicly on social media this week. That's what the homework is, right?
Mhm.
Share it with somebody individually here, work with one another, and then go and share your story this week. Is that right?
That's right.
Um, yes, Kanya, thank you. She said, I think we forget our stories still matter and people do not remember how we got started, what our lives were like before Plexus, what made us start, what intrigued us, what we love, and use the products for. Absolutely. And I'm going to end with this. Last week when I was doing my training, for that other family, that couple, the Harris family, I shared a tiny bit of Hannah's story. And after sharing Hannah's story, I then went and just made a quick post about it. And I got more comments and likes and support on that post than I've gotten on any post in a really long time. And I think that that just showed me there is so much power in these stories and there's so much power in what we're doing and again, like I mentioned Kim earlier and how she just said like this would be a gift for them, like who she was sending a message to. She almost didn't send it. She was afraid to send it, but then she realized like this could be a huge blessing for them. And so I would just want all of us to go back and revisit our story, go and tell our story, and then get reignited on that, like get renewed in that joy. And then the beautiful thing is now, however many people we have here, we have 23 people on here right now. Now we're going to have 23 different stories that we're going to be able to go and see and use and share because every single one of you raised your hand and you said a health story created some intrigue for you. When you heard somebody's health story about Plexus, that created some intrigue, that created some hope, and that created some action for you. And that's where you are now. And so you are the person that can do that for somebody else. So go write your story, go share it with somebody, and then share it on social media this week. And many of you guys are in our chat, so just go ahead and comment on that chat once you've got your post out there. So that way we can love and support you and be inspired by you and your story. Anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Oh, Lauren is maybe sending me a hand motion. Okay, so Lauren is saying, can we have someone share their story? I'd like my new. Okay. Um, yes, I know I will say, like, whenever we did this, we were like, okay, let's everybody go around and share really fast. And it actually took a really long time because like we're trying to like think through it. But are you saying you want to do it? Is that what you're saying? Okay, no. Oh, it's like playing charades with you right now.
I'm so sorry. Is anyone like really comfortable who wouldn't mind sharing their story who's been here for a couple years, maybe like a 2 minute version? I know when I heard Lacey's story about her kiddo, it like moved me so much. And that really was like the big push for me to start sharing with people just because of how much that impacted me. I didn't know if anyone was willing to like share their story tonight.
Emily, I can try to remember. I think I kind of remember the main points of mine. If you want me to do mine, I think I can do it fairly quickly. If I just like go through those points that Chris talked about, is that okay?
You see me shake my head, but yes, absolutely. You are muted now.
Okay, so basically my story that we crafted during this workshop together was um years ago I was sitting on my front porch. It was a beautiful fall day. Um and I felt um terrified because my body was so keyed up with so much anxiety and had been for so long that I was sitting there and I think my kids were at school. Honestly, I was sitting there and I thought, it's a beautiful day, but I feel like at any moment my body is so crazy that I'm gonna probably run down the street like a crazy woman at any moment because that's how I felt within my body. Um, and there's a lot of elements like in between there, but we talked about how to shorten that time span. And so moving forward, um, to seeing my friend Melissa share about Plexus. I think we talked about the fact that I was on an elimination diet at the time that Melissa shared, which I hated. I didn't want to do again. Um, but when I saw her and the transformation in her, I was convinced, okay, if it can help her with all of her problems, then it has to be able to help me. And so I just decided I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give a shot. And and then I think we moved to another an anxiety trigger. So the fall was always, and this is in no way in order, right? So the fall was always a trigger for me with my seasonal affective disorder. Every September, I would go into this anxiety, just the blue mood and all that stuff. And I even asked my husband to stay home from one of his main big business meetings one year because I was so afraid of being by myself. Well, fast forward to after I started Plexus, we are a family that goes to movies, and movies, like Emily, was overstimulated during the movie that Chris was sharing about. I was always overstimulated at really, really tense action movies. And we went to a movie. Jenna suggested this movie, and I was like, I had no idea. I thought it said it was a comedy, but we get there and it's a Fast and the Furious franchise movie. And I'm like, they're not calm movies. They're crazy. Well, I sat through that movie and I walked out and I realized I did not have one moment of anxiety triggered during that really, really intense movie at all. And that's when I realized, okay, this stuff works. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if I have to pay for it for the rest of my life. I'm a lifer on this. And that fall, so I started sharing, and that fall was another kicker for me because rather than feeling crazy, I felt calm, I felt balanced, and I was and I do think that fall, it wasn't this one, Emily, it wasn't this last year, but that fall, I did host something at my house that fall. And so, kind of fast forwarding to the picture again of welcoming people onto my front porch and into my home in the season that used to give me so much angst and anxiety and the blues. And so that's basically my story, not perfected at all, but that's the gist of it.
So Kim, that is great. And real quick, I just want to like pull out a few things that what Kim did in her story. Um, so one, it's very impressive because you did tell that in about 3 minutes, which is great. Mark Twain has a quote that says, "I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time." Like it is actually is hard to tell less. That is hard work. So great job there, Kim. So what she did at the beginning of her story is she put us in a place. She put us on that porch with her. She introduced us to a problem. She's feeling anxious about fall, which carries with it some intrigue of like, well, why? Like we all love fall. We love, the leaves changing. We love like coziness. Like, why is she feeling anxious about fall? So that is enough of like okay, well, why are you feeling anxious? And like, what happened out of that? So in her beginning, she did those three things. She introduced us to herself as a relatable character. She has a problem that we're dealing with, and we're on a place on her front porch with her. She gets the plan. Her friends shared, and she'd already tried a couple different things that didn't work. Her friends shared, and now she's marching toward to that moment happening. The moment of transformation, which I love for her, is she's in a movie theater watching a scary movie, and she's not feeling anxiety anymore. And then the story ends back on her porch where it began, except now she's able to enjoy fall. She's able to enjoy, the way that her body has changed, her health has changed, and she's able to enjoy being there with her friends. So that is a very well done story, and that you can kind of see play out all those different things and all those different pieces we talked about are present in her story, and you can imagine yourself there throughout, which is the most important thing.
Michelle, you cannot send stuff like that in the chat while Chris is talking seriously. Her
I love
stomach
it.
is going to be sitting forever on the toilet. That is
Oh,
amazing.
that's awesome. That is awesome.
But now I think after all of us hearing Kim's story, how many of us are like, oh wow, like your belief meter already rose because she said, I am a lifer. I don't care if I have to pay for this the rest of my life. This has changed everything for me. I'm a lifer. Like immediately, like your belief meter is rising and your energy and you're thinking about, okay, well, Sally Joe just told me that she's dealing with really crazy anxiety. Maybe I could share Kim's story with her. Maybe this could help Kim. So there's so much power in our story, in your story. And so we want you to dive into that. No matter if this is day 2 for you here with Plexus or you've been here for 9 years, dive into your story and go share it boldly and find such joy and delight in what the Lord has given you through this business and through these products and through this community. So thank you guys so very much for being on. I know we went a little bit longer than we had wanted to. I'm going to take the recording off. If any of you guys would like to stay with me to work for about 15-20 minutes for a power half hour, I will stay on this link and then I can guide you in some things and we can work together. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for being on. Oh, and the drawing for the gift card. What should I do? I always do this. What should I do? Number. I guess I'm just gonna go with the number. I'm gonna go with the number. Okay, everybody put a number in the chat. What number I'm gonna choose between 1 and 100, and I will write it down. Actually, Chris, do you want to write it in? Since you're the big man? Big man? Hold on, let me get you. Oh, you have a paper. Will you just write it on there?
Write a number between
A number between 1 and 100. Don't look at the chat. Hendon says to do 6-7. He's not going to do 6-7. Any of you guys have teens that they're like, what is this? 6-7. What does that even mean? Oh, yeah. Chris had to say, don't do those hand motions to our children the other day. Because, Okay. So what is your number?
38.
Turn it around so they can see.
38 is the number.
Okay. So oh, I see Patty was 37. Anybody closer than 37? I think that's good. Okay, Patty, you get a little gift card from me. I'll send you a message and we'll figure out where you want it to be from. Yay! Thank you guys so much for being on. If you guys have questions, feel free to send them over to me and I'll pass them on to Chris. And then I'll share the answers, the questions and answers to our team because I'm sure you're not the only one that has questions. If you want to stay on for a little working session with me, please do so. Otherwise, we'll see you guys later. Thanks, babe.
Thank
You're the best.
you.